Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center, and this is a podcast dedicated to helping individuals start and build successful accounting, bookkeeping, and tax businesses. It's here that we focus on the things that matter. Why? Because running a business is something that you have to do intentionally. So we focus on things ranging from marketing, selling, pricing, onboarding clients, tech stacks, staff training. We're talking about client retention, mental health, and so much more. Join us each and every week as we listen to the experts and figure out what it is we can be doing to work on our business. Today's going to be a wonderful conversation. I've got Scott Maderer. He happens to be someone that I believe we all should consider listening to. Scott and his wife, Carrie, actually started a ministry, which later became a business, which is now called Inspired Stewardship. It's basically a business that was started to help business owners serve basically Christian men and couples who are struggling to live their lives in their calling. They work to help align the way you use your time, your talent, and your treasures so that you can identify and live a fully automatic life that allows you to authentically live your calling, serve others, and provide for your family. As a certified human behavior senior consultant and members of the John Maxwell team, they focus on helping you understand yourself, understand others, and through that understanding, build the kingdom. In 2017, they took their business full-time, offering assistance through one-on-one coaching, speaking, and workshops. He has a book called Inspired Living, Assemble the Puzzle of Your Calling by Mastering You, Your Timeline, Your Talent, and Your Treasures. And it was published by Morgan James back in July of 2024. So, Scott, welcome to the show.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Roger. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, one of the things that I find a lot of people are drawn to, and I think this is something that clearly is part of your story, is in your life, there's a lot of fog and ambiguity as to what it is that we should be doing. And then there's that moment where I think you all of a sudden get clarity as to your purpose, or what someone may call their calling. Here's what I've been meaning to do. This is what I've intended to do. This is how I can more or less make a difference, and more importantly, leave a legacy. So what I'm wondering is, first of all, to kind of start this conversation, is how do you help individuals identify what is that purpose or that calling that they may have in their life?
Yeah. One thing that I really, from my viewpoint of it, when I look at calling, is I want to separate that idea of what we do for a living and our calling. Because I think a lot of times we confuse those two. We try to treat them like they're exactly the same thing. And don't get me wrong, they may be related to each other, but they're not the same thing, right?
So how do they differ then?
Yeah. So our assignment, what we do for a living, our roles, whatever you want to talk about, that's just the mechanics of what we do out into the world, right? Could be our job, could be a role like I'm a father, I'm a husband, whatever it is, different things that we do. I'm a volunteer, I do this, I do that. So those are the activities or the assignments. They're how we play out into the world. The calling, on the other hand, is deeper than that. I'm a person of faith. I believe it comes from outside, whatever way you want to frame that, whether that's from God, from the universe, whatever language you want to use. The idea is that purpose comes at a deeper level, and it connects more to how we're wired, how we're built, what we're, as you put it, what are we supposed to be doing out in the world? And it'll show up in all of those different roles and all of those different assignments, sometimes more, sometimes less, but it isn't the assignment. It's the deeper piece that we're really after in the calling.
I'm loving how you're describing this, because I'd have to agree with you. One of the things that I think is so important, and you hear people, especially when they're younger, kind of referring to this, and it's finding themselves. It's finding what is that inner core that drives them to make the decisions that they're making in their daily lives as they interact with other people. How do they show up for someone else? And when you actually have this clarity as to how you're going to show up in situations, it helps you have that purpose a little bit more defined. And so I like how you're actually putting it. There's activities that we do, but there's how we actually define our character as when we show up in those in situations, as a father, as a worker, as a community member, how we're going to now manifest in that situation. So that's very good. So I want to kind of dig a little bit deeper into this, because clearly in a business context, you've got a number of individuals that are trying to be successful in business. They're trying to provide for their families. They're trying to make a difference, probably go to market with a very defined product or service. But at the end of the day, they need to have this core definition, I feel, as to how they're going to come and manifest in those situations. So how do you help someone find that inner core and define it for themselves?
So a lot of it, first off, recognizing that finding these things is kind of, it's a journey as much as it is a destination. Yeah, we have breakthrough moments sometimes where we hit upon something. It's like, wow, that really click, that really gave me energy. I need to do more of that. But even there, we kind of begin to discover our calling through the feedback we get from others, through the interactions we have, through finding, what is it that gives us energy. So as an example, one of the activities that I share with folks is kind of looking backwards, where you sit down and you just begin to brainstorm about everything you've done in your life. And I don't just mean jobs, I mean everything. Went to summer camp, had this relationship,
Yeah.
as much stuff as you can produce, and begin then just 2 columns. What did I love about it? What gave me energy? What was good about it? What did I not like about it? What took energy away? What was not something that I enjoyed from it? And then as you do that and brainstorm, and I've had folks sometimes produce pages, when they sit down and do this activity, begin to look for the patterns, begin to look for the things that show up over and over again in the love column, and begin to look for the things that show up over and over again in the not love column. Because you're looking for patterns for those things that, without even realizing it, you've been doing or you've been experiencing, that come back to you and kind of give you that feedback of, wow, this is really something I could do, I could work in, I could feed, and it feeds my soul, it connects to who I am, it helps me serve others, all of those things. Out of that kind of begins to bubble up. And it's not a single event. It's a process, and it's a refinement. It's an iteration. That this is sort of the mission statement or the purpose statement that you have. Like you said, how do I want to show up in all of these different interactions? And the cool thing about that is that also helps you begin to figure out how you don't want to show up, which is sometimes even harder and sometimes even more important, especially as entrepreneurs. We are attracted by shiny objects, and sometimes it allows you to filter some of those shiny objects out and go, wait a minute, that why would I do that? That's just a waste of time for me, because it's not aligned with my real values, my real passion, my real purpose.
I'm loving a lot of the things that you're sharing here. First of all, you talk about this being a journey rather than a destination. Clearly, it's hard to believe that we ever truly arrive. So I like the illustration of that. The other thing is I think there's a term that's very common in society today. We often hear the term being authentic. That's something that I think is going to resonate with my listeners. But also, you spoke of alignment, and what I would like to add to this is a lot of times people speak of what are called 5 or so core moments in your life that kind of define who you are. I think those are very critical. Maybe we can talk to those. But as you kind of speak of defining, you had these columns of love and I don't remember if you said hate necessarily.
Hate, dislike, whatever phrasing you want to use.
Yeah. So here are these character traits or activities that I love or I dislike about myself or how I'm showing up. I've gone through some of these types of exercises, and they've been very profound because they're conscious efforts to define, okay, what am I trying to be as a husband, as a father, as an employer? As I step into these roles, how am I going to manifest or more or less appear? And when I start to reflect on the mentors I've had in my life, what it is they've done, and I'd like to emulate, there are some situations where I've been where I was like, I'll never do it that way. This is something I definitely don't want to do. That's the hate column, let's say. But one thing that I'm going to go back to as a core principle of who I am that was a foundation back when I was a teenager is I learned a phrase, and it's faith driven is why I'm bringing it up. It was a phrase that I was taught: I'm a child of God, a prince am I. And it spoke to me very much as to my potential, my opportunity. And so when I learned that as a very young youth, it started to actually manifest itself throughout my life as to that character. How do I want to be perceived by my friends, by my family? And it does impact who you are because it's you now creating your own legacy. So let's kind of talk about it from a business perspective. You have this activity, love, hate. Give us some idea of how that is something we could actually do for ourselves.
So, another phrasing, by the way, that I use a lot is
Mhm.
what gives me energy versus what takes energy away from me.
Nice.
Because I think for a lot of us anyway, that may even be easier than thinking love, hate, right? Especially in a business environment. Because, and first off, by the way, there's got to be things that you have to do that don't give you energy, but you just have to do because you're alive, and you're a human. I don't know anyone that gets up in the morning and goes, "Yay, it's time to fold socks." But guess what? The socks got to be folded. So, there's that kind of stuff too. So it's not about finding only the things in my life that give me energy, but as you put, it's about intentionally crafting that message, that narrative, that refinement, so that as you begin to do more of that and say no to things that aren't in that bucket,
Mhm.
you get that feedback there. It's iterative. I think a lot of times in feedback loops, right, where you do something, you make a plan, you execute on the plan, you review and reflect on what happened, you revise, you repeat, and you just kind of constantly doing those little tiny feedback loops. And that could be in exercise, that could be in business, that could be in product launches. Doesn't matter where it shows up. The concept's still the same. The framework's still the same, which is until you put it out in the world and get feedback, until you try it out, it is just a theoretical exercise. So, sitting down and doing this intentional self-reflection, that's important. That's fantastic. You need to do that. But then you got to do something with it. You got to put it into practice. You got to sit down with your calendar or with your checkbook or with your business list or with your employees or with your relationships and start saying, where are things showing up that are aligned to this, that are connected to this, that are what I want to do? And where are the things I want to say no to? And again, for business owners, I actually think the no is the harder part than the yes. The elimination is harder than what we want to say yes to. Most of the time as a business owner, you're really good at saying yes to things. You're not so great at saying no to things. At least that's the pattern I've noticed in folks over the years.
Well, when it comes to spending money, you can easily determine, is this something that I'm glad I'm spending money on? Is it something that I feel is moving me in the right direction? It's just one of those things that's an easy way to assess whether or not you're actually making the same or right decisions that are in alignment with who you are and what you're trying to do. I'm curious, with regards to doing more of the right thing, is there something that you can do to manage what you're doing to actually make sure you're doing more of the right things and getting them done?
So a lot of that is that saying no part that I was just reflecting to. What tends to happen to keep us from doing the right things is we're trying to do all the things.
Yes.
So, let's give it this one. If I walked up to you right now, Roger, and said, how are you doing? How's the week been? The knee-jerk reaction that most people give is,
I'm doing fine.
I'm busy. It's been busy. It's something about busyness, right? We almost use busy as a badge of honor in our culture. Well, busy's not good, busy's not bad, but busy just means doing a lot of stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean that anything you're doing is effective or important. You talked about money. It shows up in money too. A lot of times people come in and, like, for instance, if you sit down and do an audit of your money, how many people, and you're talking to people that do accounting and bookkeeping and that kind of work, you see this, you're talking to the business owner and they've been paying for a subscription for 3 years that they haven't used for 2.5. Because they never stopped and thought about it. Same thing happens in our time. We've got that event that shows up on our calendar. We keep going to it and we never stop and think, wait, is this actually where I want to spend my time on Thursday evening, or whatever it is. We're just doing it almost out of habit and routine with no reflection. And so the exercise, the activity is that reflection and revision. It's sitting down and doing a time audit. That could be sitting down and writing down everything that you're doing, or set an alarm on your watch that goes off every 30 minutes. And every 30 minutes, just kind of make a little note. This is what I did the last 30 minutes. You don't have to write a dissertation, just, capture it.
Yeah.
And then go back and look at that and go, wait a minute, I'm spending how many hours a day doing fill in the blank? That's not a very good, effective use of my time. I don't want to be doing that, because that's the first step. Because until you free up some time, most of us do not have time in our day to just add more stuff in without something else going away.
Yes.
We've already filled our day.
Well, there's two things that you've brought up that I really feel need attention. One is time management, and the other is financial management. And with this whole idea of purpose and having intent in all the things that we're doing, I think it's great on a weekly basis to reflect on, how did I spend my last week? And more importantly, how am I planning to spend the coming week? And then in addition to, I do it on a monthly basis, assess basically the expenses, look at the credit card statement and so forth, and figure out, okay, where am I spending not just my time, but now my money? And is it in alignment with who I'm trying to be? And oftentimes it will reveal things that I'm either not utilizing, that are a waste of money, or more importantly, frivolous things that aren't really helping me achieve what I want. I'll give you a point as an example. I'm right now on a health kick. I'm trying to actually get back healthy. There's a number of reasons for that, some of which are more motivating than others. But regardless, I'm trying to be more healthy. Well, when I look at my expenses and I see that I ate out a little bit more than I realized I was, or maybe had a dessert here that I didn't need, a shake or something, it's that reminder of, I guess there are a few more things that I could be spending my money differently or better on, as well as my time. And it's that reflection that causes us to actually self-assess and then reprioritize. So I like that exercise. I'm wondering, how do you transition this into kind of a work environment then?
So it honestly, it's quote no different in practice in terms of the framework. That idea of plan, what you just said, right? Plan, do something, review, reflect, revise. That framework works the same whether it's a business environment, whether it's your personal life. It's really no different. A lot of times the factors that come in different in a business environment comes into the complexity of the number of moving pieces. If you're a couple with a couple of kids, there's a household budget, there's only so many moving parts.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in a business environment, you've got 5 employees and you've got a couple of contractors and then you've got clients and you've got still yourself. There's a lot more moving pieces. So the framework stays the same. The complexity comes into how do I slice and dice this? So a lot of times I'm working with the owner on the owner's piece, meaning what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily specialize in, okay, now how do we translate that into the employees? I've done that, but it's not really the area where I thrive. But I've discovered that until the owner kind of gets their own stuff straight, you can work on the employees all day long. It doesn't really fix anything, because at the end of the day, what happens is tomorrow the owner wakes up and it's a completely different environment. The employees are going, what's the attitude du jour? What are we doing today, kind of thing. So helping the owner, the operator, get in a place where they really know what is the direction I'm going, why am I going that direction. I joke because I talk about stewardship, time, talent, and treasures. And,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the jokes I tell people is the truth is I'm tricking everyone, because I tell people come to me for help with time or with money. Real truth is all I ever work on is talent, because at the end of the day, how you handle your time and how you handle your money is actually more about how you handle yourself
Mm-hmm.
than it is the actual resources of time and money. And so, it's kind of I'm going to trick you and tell you that, time and money is the problem. Okay, now let's work on you.
Yeah. Well, it's the truth of the matter that the time and the money is nothing more than a reflection of how we prioritize
It's the
ourselves.
symptom.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. They're just symptoms or results of something. So very well said. Get your copy of Red to Black. It is the book written for accounting professionals to help businesses turn around and go from being in the red to being in the black. This book is written for consultants, business owners, operators, and managers, no matter what your client's product or service, or irrespective of your talent, skill, or expertise. As an accounting professional, you'll be able to use the principles presented in this book to actually become, for your clients, the profit and growth expert. Every chapter is filled with principles and concepts that you can use immediately with your clients to lead them from being in the red to being more profitable in their business, and see you as, in fact, their guide, their coach, with the expertise and wisdom that you can bring from this book. In the book, you have how-to guide explanations, you have models that you can follow, you're shown how to actually calculate and determine the fees for your services, the actual model that you'll use during the implementation of all this, and most importantly, the end-all results with your clients. Get this book now and see what it is you can do to offer this new revenue-producing service as, in fact, the profit and growth expert. For more information on how you can take advantage of this offer, go to the episode description and there get the information you need to take advantage of this today. This brings me to framework. You mentioned it a moment ago. I know there's 4 parts to what it is you talk about that you use in your book, Inspired Living, to help people find their calling. What is this 4-part framework that you refer to?
Sure. So this is kind of, again, getting back to that idea of talent being what we work on, it builds off of that. And so it's this idea of, before you move forward, the first step to doing anything is to invest in yourself. we've been talking about that a lot up till now. That's the self-reflections exercise. That's asking yourself the hard questions. That's saying, what do I want to be when I grow up? And by the way, I don't care if you're 75, you can still ask that question. If you're still sucking wind, you still got to ask, what do I want to be next in this next phase of my life?
That's right.
So it's always those things. It's the self-development piece. So I call that investing in yourself. Honestly, that's the step that a lot of people want to skip. It's like, oh, I already know who I am. No, let's spend a little bit more time and energy here, because you probably don't. The next step is to invest in others. And again, I'm a servant leader kind of minded person.
Mm-hmm.
I have that, Zig Ziglar, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want. This idea of being other focused. And
Love
so
it.
The other reason for that is that's where you get feedback. That's where the iteration happens, because until I interact with Roger, I can have this highfalutin theory of how I work in the world, but it's just a theory. Once I put it into practice and I start having a conversation and I start talking to a client, or I'm talking to an employee, or I'm doing those, now I get feedback. Now I get that reality check, of, wait, am I really showing up in the world the way I said I wanted to, right? If you're married, you get that feedback pretty regularly, right?
Daily.
Sometimes 5 or 6 times a day, depends on the day, right? We get that feedback. If you got teenage kids, you get it all the time too, but that's another conversation for another day. But all of that feedback comes in when you invest in others. And that's what lets you then refine the invest in myself. Because if it's not in alignment, you can say to yourself, wait, is that because I'm not showing up the right way? Or is that because I said that's important to me, but you know what? It's really not important to me after all.
Yeah.
Both of those are fine, by the way.
And each is reflective. I mean, it's obviously you're basically looking at how am I being perceived by others? And more importantly, how am I showing up to situations, both professionally, in the family, work, and so forth. Yeah. There's this thing that I think we're kind of tiptoeing around that I'd like to dive into, which is you have a process to actually help people master their time, master their finances, master their talents, if you will, as it becomes more clear who they are as they're now aligned with their purpose. Tell us about how you can master these things then.
So mastery, right, means simply getting to a point over time where things are running or working the way that you want them to, that you've gotten to a degree to where it's operating through routine, through ritual, through structure, through habit, through systems, through processes. Again, depends on, we use different language for different things. They're really all the same thing, which is at the end of the day, you get up in the morning, and what happens by the end of the day is kind of what you intended for it to happen, whether that's with your money, whether that's with your time, whether that's with your relationships. So all of that, we've actually mentioned it already, comes about through that idea of sitting down and doing a plan, then actually executing on that plan, review, reflect on that plan, and then revise and repeat. It's that iterative process. It's, again, a framework of circling back through everything you do so that you can, over time, get a little bit better each day. Because the truth is, mastery, I think a lot of times the mistake we make is we look for those kind of hit it out of the park moments. We look for the home runs. We look for the massive change. Go to a gym in January, you can't get a machine. Go to a gym in March, ain't no problem getting a machine. They're wide open, because everyone's looking for that fast fix, the easy button. And the truth is, the real mastery comes about by just getting that 1% better, or that 0.1% better, or that 10% better a little bit every day over time. That's why it's hard. If we could do it with an easy button, we all would have done it already. Nobody would be financially struggling. Nobody would be worried about their time management. Nobody would be dealing with anything. We all would have hit the button and we all would have fixed it. So it is that iterative process that leads to the mastery over time.
I would like to add to this part of the conversation simply because I think this is so essential to success. And I believe it on both a personal and a professional level. And it's the idea of habits. You create good habits. You create then a process, a system that then allows you to naturally go about moving towards what you're intending to do. If you want to see yourself and be seen by others as a healthy person, then you consistently eat and do things that are healthy in nature. these things are then habitual. There's a great book, Atomic Habits, that I think addresses, as you were describing, these incremental 1% changes that as you at the atomic, the subatomic level, start to manipulate your daily routine, just putting in these little things like, I will always do X, Y, or Z, then you're perpetuating this idea of who you are, and the habits themselves will define that. So I love what you're describing there. So this gives me a moment to pause here, because I want to reflect now back on your journey. I'm curious. Clearly, you and your wife started this first as a ministry, then as a business, where you're coaching now business leaders and so forth. What was your calling? What was it that got you to the point where you realized this is something that not only you needed to do, but to give back and actually identify processes or systems that you could then teach others? Where did that begin or start?
Honestly, my mom's joke is, you've been a coach since you were like 8 years old, son. She recognizes that in me before I ever recognized that in me, right? She reflects back to me now, because I was always that kid that others sought out for help and advice. And I, of course, when I was dating, that was horrible, because I was always the friend, not the boyfriend, right? That kind of thing. Because I was that kid. I was that person that people kind of leaned on for help and advice. I actually was going to do medical research. I trained to do that, pivoted from that, became a school teacher. Again, what am I doing? I'm working with students. But I always had that framework and that mindset of, I don't want to stand up at the front of the room and lecture for 2.5 hours. I don't enjoy that. The kids don't enjoy that. It's not fun for anybody. So how can I do this in a way that's more coachy, more, interactive, more go back and forth? I went into the corporate world. I became an executive in a educational testing company. So I moved myself up to, fairly senior position. But now what am I doing? I'm teaching and training other leaders in the company. Again, the exact same thing, so looking backwards, I see these nuggets that were connected to this idea of lifting people up, this idea of developing people. And, that's where the skills and the knowledge and the other things came from. Is I joke and tell people that my book took me 35 years to write, because most of the stuff that's in there is stuff that I started even back as an educator, but then over the years it's changed, it's tweaked, it's refined, it's different today than it was then, but it's really the same ideas. It's not like it's totally new. It's that refinement that I think makes it valuable, but it kept showing up over and over again. My wife and I went through our own journey with financial problems. We actually almost got divorced because of it. I was actually suicidal because of finances. By the way, that's the number one cause of male suicide, is financial problems. So it shows up a lot. And what happened is folks began to look at us and go, man, y'all have managed to turn this around. Y'all got completely out of debt. You've really changed your life. Can we do that? And it's like, well, yeah, absolutely. You could do that. Here, let us help you. And that's where the ministry came about. And we started doing that as a ministry. And then I discovered that everything I was teaching about money, people would then start asking me about time. And it's like, well, it's actually the same framework. It's really not, it's different, but it's not different at the same time. I can help you with that. And then that grew into where people started saying, no, let us pay you to do this. And it kind of naturally became a business, and we did it part-time and then transitioned to full-time and made that leap back in 2017. And now I've worked with clients in 16 countries and done the whole kit and caboodle. And I love what I do, because it's even more aligned. I don't know that this is the end of the journey, but it's still more aligned today than what it was 6 years ago or 7 years ago or 10 years ago.
Very good. I can actually relate personally to what it is you're sharing, because like you, I've gone through these various transitions and experiences in life. And one of the things that really resonated with me was Maslow's hierarchy of need. And the pinnacle of that, when you get to self-actualization, you start to understand that as you look around, people are inspired by who you are, and they're interested in how not only you got there, but what were the processes that you actually used to become who you are. And that legacy that you now have, you can impart to others. And so, like you were describing, people are interested in the processes, the systems, the way you make decisions. Well, as you start to impart that information, you become naturally an advisor. And it really stems from a lot of listening, but more importantly, the ability to articulate well how you make decisions, how you handle situations. And what I'm hearing you describe is something that I'm familiar with, which is in the business coaching sphere. If you can actually create processes or systems that are duplicatable, where people can follow them and get predictable results, they're willing to not only pay, but obviously follow and implement these things. And that's one of the things that I believe resonates with people, is that process. So that brings me to the question I was going to ask, which is regarding your book. It's one thing to start the business. It's one thing to identify systems that you can impart to others, but it's another to say, I'm going to now write a book. What took you to writing a book?
So I actually I tell people I didn't write a book, I spoke a book, and then had it written. So
Okay.
what I mean by that is I am an auditory processor, right? I think through ideas and process them by talking about them, which is why back in 2018 I started a podcast, because I was like, people were like, you've got to write stuff, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. But I'll talk stuff. I can do that, And of course, nowadays, right? What do? You can turn spoken stuff into written stuff very easily with the press of a button. So over time, I began to think through and process, and I had other people come on and begin to, challenge my ideas and talk through with other experts, and begin to refine what I struggled with, myself, and what I'd worked to impart to others, formally and informally, over the years, to say exactly what you're talking about. What parts of this are just, it was a fluke, it was luck, it was whatever, and what parts of this are actually systems or processes or frameworks that apply, if not all the time, at least the vast majority of the time. I have a hard time with absolutes. So there's probably an exception out there to anything. So I kind of, let's not go to 100%, but 90%, 95% repeatable, and distill out of that those concepts. And then that's what I then sat down and said, okay, these are the core ideas when it comes to these pillars of time, of talent, and of treasures, that are reproducible, that are repeatable, that actually work for the vast majority of people, the vast majority of the time. So I think one of the problems with a lot of self-development, a lot of books that are out there, is somebody sits down and says, hey, this is what worked for me, go do it. Problem with that is, if you're not in exactly the same place and wired the same way and with all the same gift, it may or may not work for you. So I tried to get away from, this is what I did, I'm perfect, please follow what I did, and say more, okay, now what are the frameworks, what are the systems, what are the processes, what are the habits that we can distill out of it and impart those? Because those work, you may have to tweak them or refine them a little bit, which is a lot of what we do in coaching, but it's still going to work. It's just going to be tweaked to work for you or your particular situation.
Like you, Scott, I have similar thoughts. I am much better speaking than writing, and I'm much better at communicating with another person, thinking through, talking through various things, and coming to some very let's say discrete ideas and thoughts. So I like what you're describing here, because I have a similar way of let's say working. The one thing I would add to this is, when you get into a situation where others see what they perceive to be success or happiness, they do look for what it is that you're doing. And so although you're trying to say, it doesn't necessarily come out as a cookie cutter approach, just do this and you'll be happy and good. But it does actually say, like you're describing, here are some, let's say, thoughts, here are some habits, here are some techniques that you can use to help you in the situations you're experiencing.
Absolutely.
So I do like how you're describing that. Here's something that I'd like to do, is ask now about your wife and the support that she was able to offer you in this entire process. Obviously, going out, starting your own business, it's a big deal. So how was Carrie instrumental in helping you really have the success that you've been able to experience?
So, my wife is oftentimes, when we talked about, investing in others and getting feedback from others, my wife is a big source of that for me. I tell people that in a very real way, whenever I hear God, it shows up in the voice of my wife. And I don't mean that in a naggy, like she's bossing me around, telling me what to do. That's not what I mean. I just mean she's somebody that can speak truth into my life in a way that I actually hear, where there are other people that could have said the exact same thing, and I'd be like, that's not accurate. She can speak it, and it's like, okay, that's truth. So she's the one that from the very beginning said, these things are things that we need to share with others. These things are not things that we just need to sit on, for ourselves. She's the one, when I was in the corporate job and I'm working long hours, she's like, I know that, but you still got to start this business on the side. I know it's going to mean I'm going to see you a little less. I know we're going to spend some time doing that. And she's worked behind the scenes. She doesn't necessarily show up on the podcast. She doesn't like to do that. That's not her gifting, but she does, she's the one that lets me do that. If that makes sense, because she does all the other stuff that has to get done so that I can show up on a podcast and speak to Roger. So she does that without ever really stopping to look at it. So it's why, I describe the business as our business. This is not my business. This is our business, because without her, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Very well said. One of the things that I really appreciate about the spouse component to all of this is the fact that even though they may be critiquing us in situations, that critique comes from very often, I believe, love,
Absolutely.
and more importantly, from the context of a lifespan. It's not a situational feedback where somebody that is perhaps a friend or an acquaintance coming in and giving you advice. That's wonderful. They have a perspective that they're offering. But when a spouse is able to come in, they've got years worth of context that they can bring to that same critique, and they're able to give it to you with love, hopefully, that you're now able to see, okay, this is definitely somebody, of all the voices that I'm hearing, someone I should be listening to. So I appreciate you sharing that. Learn the turnkey process for starting and building a successful accounting business. It's in this course that you'll actually experience 4 specific trainings. Part 1, your business plan, everything you need to know to get started. Part 2, how to price your services, the pros and cons of different methods and the best way to price your services that are both profitable and professional. Marketing and selling your services so that you can actually be top of mind, but more importantly, how to actually be seen as a trusted strategic advisor. And last of all, mapping it all out. 5 principles in running a profitable business so that you can be both competent and confident in the services you're providing. Learn now what it is you can be doing to start and build your own successful accounting, bookkeeping, or tax business. Go to the episode description and there get the information you need to take advantage of this today. Regarding your faith, clearly we started with faith. I'd like to just kind of bring this in here at the last minute. How has faith been instrumental in helping you with your business? How does it play into the business world?
So, my walk, my Christian walk has been, like a lot of us, what I would consider really bumpy. I was raised in the church. I was brought up that way, baptized and all of those things. And then I literally left the church because of some experiences that I had with people in the church. I still pray that prayer sometimes, Lord, please save me from your people. Because, I still loved God. I still loved that idea, but I just couldn't participate. I couldn't do some of the things. And so I had left and I labeled myself an atheist. The truth is I was an agnostic because I was still studying a lot of that. So an atheist is someone who doesn't believe in God. An agnostic is somebody who just isn't sure. It's kind of more on that doubting journey. And I'm still doing a lot of that work and visiting people in churches and studying and doing all of that. And over time, what I finally kind of came to the realization of is, none of us are perfect people. I'm certainly not. If I found the church out there that only let perfect people in, they wouldn't let me in anyway. So why bother? I'm not going to find that anyway. What am I doing? And so eventually my wife and I kind of returned to the church. And it was part of when we went through the divorce and, me being suicidal and all of that. Part of that journey was reopening myself up to the idea of my faith and my spirituality, and this component of my life is important to me. It is part of my identity. It's part of that self-reflection of, you're denying this, but yet it's really core to who you are. And so from that, I went kind of back into, we do attend a church now. We're actually very involved in the church now, but it really wasn't so much about, quote, the church as it was about that journey of rediscovering myself and rediscovering the relationship that I had with God and being open to that, the fact that meant, if that's truly important to me, then it needs to show up in my life and what I do and what I say, and how I play that out.
I love that. And I appreciate you sharing it, because one of the things that I've also experienced is you go through in life faith journeys. And whether it becomes that of a journey of an atheist, an agnostic, somewhere along the line, I think what happens is you find that you have to come to peace with something. And in your case, obviously, the faith became very important and you're now actively involved. And I appreciate that, because from a community standpoint, I think people who are engaged with other people within the community, it makes the community that much better. So having served myself in with the youth ministries, I find that that's very rewarding. I now have young men that I was involved with that are now married and starting their lives and in their early 20s. And it's fascinating to see what they've been able to accomplish, and to think that I was just a small part of that journey while they were in those formative teen years. That's something that I think is powerful. And I don't share that in order to draw attention to me. I share that to inspire others to get out there and get involved and participate in your communities, and perhaps in an organized religion format, simply because of the fact that I feel it is very rewarding. So thank you for sharing. One of the things I'd like to end with is gratitude. What's something that you're grateful for?
Honestly, I'm grateful for the opportunity that I have to reach out and to serve others, to help others along that journey. And I don't just mean that in the business environment. I mean it, in other environments too. I serve on nonprofit boards and I do other work like that. And as you just said, that's not because I want to sit there and go, oh, it's about me. Look how great I am. But it's finding those places where I'm authentically drawn to lift up and serve others. I always walk away from those situations more blessed and more grateful for that opportunity. So, as an example, I'm going down after we get off this call to help start setting up for some food ministry work that we're doing. Just the little things like that are really the opportunities that I look back at the end of the day and go, "That's it. I'm blessed by doing that."
I love it. I love it. And blessed is right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap this up a little bit and kind of bring some closure to this. First thing I want to do is actually invite our listeners. There is something here, Scott, that is made available in the episode description. We're going to provide some information regarding free resources that he has to actually help you apply these principles in your life. So definitely go to the episode description and find there the information that he has, as well as visit him at his website. There you'll find information regarding his work and what it is he's doing to actually help basically business owners like ourselves find more purpose and be more authentic, and most importantly, take advantage of the time and the talents we have and put them towards very good purposes. So with that being said, I want you to check out the episode description. In addition to that, I'd like to contribute a few things that I have also there in the episode descriptions, one of which is a book called Your Strategic Accountant. It truly is a way that you can actually step up as an accounting professional and best serve your clients. But then I want to introduce you to a book called Your Profit and Growth Expert. It is where you can take a more advisory role with your clients and do much like what we're discussing here with Scott, take on more of a coaching type component with your services as it relates to helping your business clients grow their businesses and do what matters most in their companies so that they can realize their fullest potential. So check out those two books, each of which is free there in the episode description. The other thing that I felt is kind of helpful with our conversation today is the framework that Scott spoke of. Clearly, there is something that we can do to intentionally be focused on our businesses. And I would invite you to kind of revisit that part of the conversation where we discussed the framework. And then we spoke of Carrie, his wife, being so supportive and helpful as Scott was going about doing this in his business. I think the support that we each receive as we're running our companies is essential, because one of the things that we need to recognize is, although we may sometimes feel alone at the top, it isn't that we are alone. It's just that is a feeling. Oftentimes, successful individuals have those individuals that are by their side, helping them, supporting them through the process. And Scott obviously spoke of carrying that in that context. And then lastly, with regards to faith, I think faith is definitely something that contributes to my success. And I'm grateful that Scott was able to elaborate on how he's felt that it's actually enabled him to be the success that he is. And so those are some of my takeaways from our conversation. So Scott, real quickly, I want to come back to you for a closing thought then.
I think the most important thing, if you only took away one thing from this, it's that idea of sitting down and doing that work of self-reflection, sitting down and whether it's examining your time, whether it's examining your money, whether it's examining the, kind of who do I want to be when I grow up question. all of those ideas are important, that you apply that framework of really doing the hard work of reflecting on how am I showing up, and is that actually how I want to show up? Because that's the route to changing and building the systems and processes, the habits, all the other stuff. It has to start with that self-reflection.
Perfect. Excellent. Well said. And thank you. So here's what I'm going to do to wrap this up. Obviously, if you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, I invite you to subscribe and get the notifications each and every week as we have experts on the show to share with us various things that we can be doing to work on ourselves as well as our business and building what I refer to as the premier accounting firm. In that mindset, or in that context, I want to invite you to go to universalaccounting.com, and there in the navigation, find the podcast section. There we've actually compiled a number of highlights, playlists that you can go binge listen to, where you can go deep into the various things that are applicable to your current situation, whether it be marketing, selling, pricing, mental health, just a variety of topics that you may want to go deep into with the experts addressing how they can assist and help you in those situations. In addition to that, I want to invite you to GrowCon. GrowCon is an annual conference where we have basically the experts on stage to address us as owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses. It's here that we get insights, timely information as to what it is we can be doing now to work on our business. And this is a conference that you don't want to miss to get those relevant things you need to actually work on as it relates to marketing and selling, growing your business, effective strategies that you can use to get your ideal client, what you can be doing to price your services and offer quality services that ensure that you're actually serving your clients best, meeting their needs and retaining them as you should. And then with regards to production, obviously working on things that make you more efficient and profitable, so that whether it be tech stacks or staffing or just basically client relations, what is it you're doing to ensure that you're actually building the premier accounting firm in your area? So I invite you to get your tickets now and join me for GrowCon. It's here that you're going to interact with your peers, make new friendships, collaborate, and also meet the staff here at Universal Accounting Center that are committed to helping you be in business for yourself, but not by yourself with Universal. In addition to all of this, if you have any questions regarding these topics or anything else that we've discussed, feel free to reach out to us. You can contact us by calling us at 801-265-3777 or visiting us at universalaccountingschool.com. So with all that being said, take care, be safe, and have a wonderful day out there.